Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features WildC.A.T.s number 12, cover dated August 1994. The cover is by Jim Lee and Scott Williams, and this one reminds me of covers A and B of Adjectiveless X-Men number 1. So you've got a group of 4 figures and they're fighting someone off to the right hand side. So that is a lot like cover A and B of Jim Lee's X-Men number 1. And the cover here is, so because of that 4-figure design, I think it works well. It's nicely balanced, but the coloring, I feel, is a little bit oversaturated. It's quite dark, at least to my eye here. It might look a bit brighter on camera. And then, of course, up here in the image eye, we've got the Huntsman in 3/4 profile. So that's a nice little touch. Though I do feel also that maybe Claremont might have been privately miffed that the Huntsman only got the first cover of this, what was supposed to be originally a 3-issue storyline. He featured on the first cover, but none of the others. And as it turns out, we see here the advertisement for the reuniting of Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, and it advertises a 3-issue story, issues 10, 11 and 12. So this is 12, but it turns out this is not the last part of the story. So obviously as they were going along, the story perhaps grew in the telling, and what we have in here is 26 pages of story, but it's very much like a middle chapter. So we don't get a denouement. We get some developments in terms of the overarching story, and in particular in relation to Zealot. So Zealot in the first issue of the crossover, number 10, between Claremont's characters and Jim Lee's, was wounded in the stomach by a Raksha, one of these aliens, poisoned by the alien, and she is failing and fading fast in this particular issue. So that's quite a nice splash page there. We've got the Huntsman now, who is driving Zealot's bullet bike, and she is, as I said, passing out from the wound in the sidecar with Miranda Tate, Miranda Tate, the princess that Huntsman is guarding and protecting. So the credits page here, the title of the story is A Gathering of Eagles. The story by Chris Claremont, pencils Jim Lee, inks Scott Williams, letters Tom Orzechowski, colors Joe Chiodo, and color separations by Digital Chameleon and Wildstorm Effects. So no ink assists here, at least none that are noted in the credits for Williams. So the team still doing their very best and their own work on this special series of issues where Jim Lee and Chris Claremont and most of that X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men team reunite for the story, including Scott Williams and Tom Orzechowski. So let's go past this opening splash page, and what we have here is we have HARM Harm, who is zeroed in on Huntsman as he flees, launches some missiles at them, and it seems like there's a contact strike. So then we get a nice anchor image here of the Troika, and it turns out that Harm is a bit of a transformer, so he's transformed into a jet platform that we've got Attica and Slag riding along on. And there's a little bit of catch up there in terms of what's been going on previously in the story in the characters' dialogue. And then we switch back to the Docklands construction site, where in a warehouse, Tapestry is working her powers on captured WildC.A.T.s, including Jacob Marlowe, who's been turned and is now one of her slaves, Spartan, of course, Voodoo's possessed by one of those Raksha aliens, and Tapestry's working away on the body and soul of Warblade there, and obviously Maul will be up next. So nice image of her there by Jim Lee. Everybody standing on the same horizon line. Looks good. And also what Tapestry has done is she has blended the 2 orb-powered characters, Providence and also here Void. So they're also under her command and power. And Voodoo, the alien that has possessed her, is feeding on her flesh, so she needs fresh sustenance. And Jacob says here, already in the works. And it turns out that the victims he has in mind for her are his assistants from Halo Corporation, Stansfield and Jules. So Jules spots Voodoo with her altered face and gets out of the car to help her, but she's wary nonetheless that, you know, there could be a trap or something dangerous or perilous afoot. And then we get a little insight into, let's call it the psychic or astral plane, where the Raksha alien here is fighting for continued possession of Voodoo and she's fighting back. So we see that represented physically here. And something I want to note at this point is, so Tom Orzechowski is like one of the top letterers in the business, but I was trying to figure out as I was reading the issue whether he was writing or whether he was doing the lettering in the fashion of the 1980s, whether the lettering was on the artboards or whether it was digitally superimposed over the art. And it looks like it might be digitally superimposed on certain pages where the speech balloon borders are kind of jagged or grainy. And it seems like that could be an issue with the resolution being off with computer or digital lettering. But I'm not 100% sure. And also another feature of the lettering in this issue is that sometimes it seems like the lettering is not well positioned within the speech balloon. So you can see it here where it's almost butting up against the corner of the speech balloon. In other cases, it's more centered, like here and here and here. And I just wonder, what is the significance of that? I'll point out another couple of examples if I remember as I go through the issue. So the resolution of this is the Raksha continues to be in full possession of Voodoo. Jules gets out of the car here. That's a nice kind of Whilce Portacio-esque style panel with the open borders, the border created by the buildings here, and then this kind of gesture of like a swatch of ink here running off the side of the page. That's very Whilce Portacio-esque, but it looks good here. So Jules comes up to Voodoo cautiously, and of course it is a trap. Jacob's lured you into a trap, says Voodoo, well possessed by the Raksha. And then we get this interesting sound effect, vamp, because she is a kind of life force vampire. One thing I would say about the inking here and the spotting of blacks is it looks a little strange. Doesn't quite look 100% like Scott Williams. And so here and there I have a doubt about whether Scott Williams is 100% inking every single one of these pages. Also, this is an interesting page layout in itself. These 5 horizontal panels, that was a staple of Frank Miller's layouts on Daredevil, which I've commented on in my videos on Frank Miller's original Daredevil run. Jim Lee, a big fan of that. So I wonder, is there a little bit of the Frank Miller influence going on here with the panel layouts? In any case, the Troika arrives to inspect whether the missiles did the job, and of course they find no bodies. So Slag in particular is looking forward to an up close and personal conclusion of the job to hunt down and capture the trio that they're after. So it looks like Miranda, the princess, is resting there. Zealot is still fighting her wound. And this is a nice panel here with the silhouette of the bars of the window of the warehouse that they're in. It looks like Venetian blinds, so the slats of the Venetian blinds cast across Huntsman's face. I like that. And we get some double lighting as well on this side and on the other side. It's nicely done. So Zealot here says, "We cannot fight, I cannot run. Take your child, my friend, and save yourself. They'll be satisfied with me." And Miranda asks, "What about your friends, the WildC.A.T.s? Not to mention that tapestry you're so scared of," says Huntsman, and we saw that in the previous issue. And Zealot responds, "There is a pattern for every life. If mine is done." So she seems to be losing heart, losing hope. But Huntsman has a different proposal. He says, "I have a better idea. You guard Miranda, I'll play hero." So, before he has a chance to surprise the Troika have arrived. That's a nice use of silhouetting of the figures there, and I like the planted sword and the cast shadows from the figures as well. Nice kind of, what would I say, like it looks like the ink there is done with a brush as well, the cast shadow. Yeah, that's a nice panel, nicely done. Let's continue with the story. So they're outside, Slag is using his lava powers to melt the building that they're in. And Huntsman here says, alone or not, I'm our only chance. So Zealot says, take a weapon. He says to her, you keep him, you'll need him, I'll find my own. Again, a nice use of silhouette here on the figure of Huntsman. This is a Jim Lee staple. So we've just got little details of his costume that are showing here, and also his teeth and eyes. That's a nice little device to make for an interesting panel. Then we switch back to the warehouse where Tapestry has completed her work on Warblade. And there's a little bit of to and fro between her and the Providence Zealot entity. And I like the idea here in the lettering that Tom Orzechowski has come up with, where the lettering is kind of blurred, suggesting that the two voices of the two characters, Void and Providence, speaking as one. And then we switch back to the warehouse. That's a nice top-down shot here. With the rafters and other bits of the structure, and Zealot backed up against the wall there, checking out her wound here. It's not healing properly. The dressing's rotted through, she says. And I like the details here of her satchel with all of the ammunition inside it. Magazines and rounds in there. That's a nice little bit of detail from Jim Lee. So then she begins to turn. She's fighting the corruption of mind and body wrought by the Raksha poison, and she's determined not to allow the full transformation. So that's a staple of Claremont's kind of, career themes: corruption of mind and body, the will, fighting against that corruption, stoicism, determination, endurance, grit. And especially for female characters, and we're getting it here with his characterization of Zealot. Then we get some action. Huntsman using this, what would we say, like it's an iron piece of tubing or pipe against Harm, knocks him over and finds the weak spot, his vulnerability. But Harm sets off a missile which strikes Attica. And then we have this figure in silhouette behind the building who creeps up on Attica and pulls a gun on him and sticks it right in his mouth. And I like this bit of tough guy dialogue. Smile, Attica, like you really mean it. And it's the soldier. So he was summoned in the previous issue by Savant, and now he's there to back up Zealot. But Slag here has control of his body at a kind of, it seems like a molecular level, and he's turned into a lava wave which covers Huntsman. So that would seem to be the end of Huntsman. Slag himself says, he says that no one will know where you died, stranger, or how. There will not even be ashes left to remind people you've ever been. Count your blessings though. With Zealot I will not be so merciful. And then a cry gets his attention, a scream. Something I want to note here about Orzechowski's lettering is the way that he leaves the straight line for the letters of Slag's dialogue. So we have this kind of, what would I say, like this uneven lettering, and deliberately in order to convey the timbre of Slag's speech patterns and the way that he talks. So then back in the warehouse, it's Miranda who's called out. She won't stop screaming, says Zealot, as though she herself was being plunged into the fire. So there's an implication. We never get an explicit explanation of the connection between Huntsman and the princess, but there seems to be some kind of, to use Claremont's own terms, a psychic bond. That's what he would say. There seems to be some kind of psychic bond between the pair, and so she passes out screaming as it seems that Huntsman is being killed by Slag. Now Zealot knows that she's going to have to defend the child, and in comes Harm, but because of the damage wrought by Huntsman, he's not able to operate at 100% or optimum capacity. So he speaks aloud and says, be advised that combat damage has significantly reduced sensor effectiveness. So he's caught off guard. This iron girder, I like the detail of the chains around it, like just slams right into him. Whammo. in the sound effect, and he knocks up against Slag and breaks open his mantle. That's interesting. So the core of Slag there is exposed, and the lava has actually affected Harm also. Warning, warning, the robot says Slag's blood, quote unquote, penetrating fractures in outer integument, magazine temperature exceeding safety tolerances, so of course it explodes. And look at this hand, that's a familiar gloved hand, working on the piping here. And so we have a sprinkler system set off, and Slag says, silly girl. And this is interesting because just at this point in the story, Slag's speech pattern, his style of speaking changes. Vas, did you think that water on my lava form would perhaps dampen the fires within me until I could no longer move? Heinrich Hester is not so easily vanquished. So it turns out that this guy is German. And as I said, just as soon as we learn his nationality, his speech pattern changes to reflect that. And I wonder, was it just a case of Claremont getting the note regarding Heinrich, or like Slag's human identity at this point, and then adopting for him or creating for him a new speech pattern? Or is it that he's decided, like who's decided on what would I say, like human identity of Slag? Because I don't remember learning that in the original miniseries, which was the last time that we saw the Troika. So then we get a good couple of action pages here, and we get something of a climax to Zealot's situation, fighting off that Raksha. She's forced to make a decision and take an action that she never wanted to. And that's because Slag gets his hands on Miranda here, and he says, you show yourself, Zealot, you help me, yeah. So again, that kind of German style of speech, or I burn her. So this is the moment. Oh, by the way, Huntsman turns up alive as well, but there's no explanation as to how he could have survived, what happened to him. And, so what do I think about that? In some regards, I don't have a problem with the device of apparent deaths and then the characters surviving, but a little indication as to how on earth he could have gotten out of that being covered with lava by Slag would be useful here. It would be helpful to know it. And I just kind of feel at times with the Huntsman and Miranda that Claremont is holding back a lot of information regarding these characters. Like, we're 3 issues in now, and the mysteries just haven't been solved regarding the pair of them. And also just something else that I should have pointed out when Miranda was in the warehouse and trying to cut. Here we see her here. It looks like she's holding scrolls or parchments, and there's no explanation of that. What's she holding on to there? And yeah, so that was a little bit annoying as I was rereading this, kind of thinking a bit too much in the way of mystery here. A little bit more kind of explanation would be useful. In any case, that's an interesting image of Zealot's face as she's resisting the transformation into a Raksha possessed creature, and then she makes that decision to use a power that she had forsworn. So she says here, there's no other way. Be ready, Huntsman, you'll have only a moment to save her. And then in the narrative expositions, we get some explanation of what's going on here. Looks scary, by the way, sorry, these narratives exposition, this is first person narration by Miranda. So looks scary before, more Raksha than human, that transformation almost complete. This is worse. The power is so bright, it can't be endured, yet it casts her in as absolute and all-embracing a shadow. So this is a use of a dark power. Let's turn the page and see what more we might learn about it. Hits Slag between the eyes, burrows through deep to his soul. I know this because the fringes of her spell are doing the same to me. So Zealot, who has always sworn by Hecate, the Greek goddess, witch goddess, lunar witch goddess, is now casting a spell of her own. So she isn't just like a Coda trained assassin. She has this other range of power, but she'd forsworn it. So again, Miranda's first person narrations, we're all screaming, but with us, it's a mix of pain and fear. With Zealot, it's joy. So Zealot says, take her, huntsman, now. And what is this here? This kind of astral version of Zealot with this kind of maniacal, joyous grin on her face as she takes possession. Is this an illustration of a change in her soul as she takes possession now? This darker soul takes possession of her body. Then Huntsman acts to save Miranda. Slag transforms into the man he once was and falls off the side of the building. And for Zealot, the light show's just begun. So there's going to be a transformation here of Zealot, also in terms of her body. So this is a nice page too, where Slag, in his original humanoid form, we catch up with his fall from the side of the building, hits the ground, soldiers there waiting for him, got a gun pointed at his head. And Slag says, you fool, you don't understand. Your precious Zealot, she did this to me. Going rounds with wildcats, that's one thing. But I don't fight witches. I don't fight ghosts. And notice too, Orzechowski's lettering, it's back to an even keel, so to speak, now that he's no longer in that kind of lava monster state. So Soldier there says, that's Zealot. She's full of surprises. But for your sake, Skell, she better not be the ghost. So HARM is up on the top of the building. He's targeting with the last of his resources, Soldier, and bit of a cliffhanger there. And then we go back inside to the building, and Huntsman there. I like this panel. I like the design of it. The inverted silhouettes for the characters, the computer coloring by Joe Chiodo kind of filling out the forms as well. It's nicely done. Zealot here on her knees. Mother Hecate, forgive me, that was magnificent. So Huntsman makes the point, you've changed, and she says, more than you can imagine. Are you all right, he asks her, and her response is, I am damned. So Miranda as well. Huntsman says something interesting here. How is Miranda? And he says, I suspect you know that answer far better than I. And she responds, I'm out of practice. My control isn't what it needs to be. What counts is that you saved her, he says. And she responds, you're a generous and honourable man, Huntsman. Before we are done, I may put that honour to the test. Say the word, thank you. So she's contemplating there, maybe using Huntsman to kill her after they've completed the mission, the quest that they're on. And then Huntsman asked the question about the cavalry that she spoke of, she mentioned earlier. And again, here's an example of the Orzechowski lettering that surprises me. So we've got the speech balloon there, but the lettering is like butting up against the corner of the speech balloon. And that's not typical of Orzechowski. So it makes me suspicious about the lettering process, maybe how much time he had, or his skill with digital lettering, if that's what he's doing here, or a combination of lettering by hand, but then using a computer to superimpose it on the art. Whatever the process was, something's not 100% in the result, I feel. Again, you can see here, like the lettering in this speech balloon is kind of butting up against the edge of the speech bubble. It's not properly centered. Anyway, Majestic arrives. Again, I like this panel here. I like the energy effect around whatever it is they teleport in. That's unclear. And Majestic introduces himself in very kind of golden age, silver age terms. Peace, humans, I'm Mr. Majestic. And Savant is aghast because she sees her big sister and realizes that she's too late. Well, the belief is that it is her big sister. There's a mystery there. There's a backstory there that will ultimately be revealed that they're not sisters. But in any case, that's in the future. Now, this particular page here, the coloring is very, very saturated. It's super saturated and it makes it quite dark. Now, things are happening at night, but yeah, the coloring is very dark and it's obscuring the line art on this page. So that could be down to a misjudgment in terms of the levels of the computer coloring on screen, or it could be down to the printing process. So Savant here is getting ready. She's pulling a gun out of her satchel. She's going to kill Zealot in order to save her soul. Majestic says stop, and Zealot here says, if I am what you fear, Savant, no weapon of yours can do me. And this is bizarre. H-A or M, and if I'm not, well, and then she sees Harm up on the rooftop of the building. I wondered what happened to Harm, and he's blasted off by something or other. We'll see what that is in a moment, who does that. But I wondered about this. Is this kind of an implication that she had some, subconscious, subliminal perception that Harm was targeting them? Or is it a mistake by Orzechowski that he thought when he was lettering this that it was a reference to Harm on the page? Something has gone wrong there, I feel. And then Savant is still determined to kill Zealot, but Huntsman intervenes, and that's a nice top-down angle here. So he pulls Zealot's blade on Savant right at her throat and says, Zealot's earned the right to call the hours of her life. They end when she says so, not before. And now, who arrives except for Grifter? So he says of Huntsman, don't know the face, but I definitely like the chewed. And he says, my sentiments exactly, baby sister, as in he agrees with Huntsman, and she is still of a different opinion. She thinks it's foolish to let Zealot live. Dirty job, savvy, but somebody's got to do it. So here we go. This is a nice open border panel here as well, with the figures in a kind of top-down angled perspective. It looks good. And Zealot says, none of this would have been necessary, Savant, had you been here sooner. Where were you? What's the distance from Washington to New York in your 7-league boots? 20 steps? 30? Majestic's got nothing to say there for the moment. We've got, what would you say, a handshake between Grifter and Huntsman there. And then we're almost at the end, last 2 pages. This is an interesting little bit of characterization here, and it will turn out to be significant in the future. So Savant says, I had to make a detour. Considering the opposition, I felt we needed some major reinforcements. So Majestic says, fair greetings, Magistrix. And Zealot just ignores him, walks away, turns her back to him, and moves to the soldiers. Soldier status, please. Again, here's one of those speech balloons where the lettering is right up against the edge of the balloon. So something definitely amiss there. Nice top-down angle here. Soldier says, whatever you did to Slag, put the fear of God into them. They'll be on their best behaviour. So he asked, should he call the cops to pick them up? And Zealot responds, that'll have to wait. We have more dangerous game to hunt. But I must warn you all, the odds will be against us. So Grifter's up for that. Zealot continues, in all likelihood, Cole will be fighting our fellow Wildcats to the death. And Huntsman says, in that case, Z, one way or the other, we owe it to your friends to set them free. So he's still on board to help out Zealot. That's a nice anchor image there. I really like this work on Zealot, the angle on her face there, face and head. And there's some nice hatching here on her armor as well by Scott Williams. This is a nice panel that works well. Last page. So we're going finally to get a climactic confrontation between Zealot and Tapestry. And now with the spell that Zealot cast and the change of her hair, doesn't she and Tapestry have more of a physical resemblance? Isn't there an implication of physical resemblance between them? And what might that imply? Of course, great image here, full page image of Tapestry. Looking at Zealot and Grifter somehow, she has a way of surveilling them and keeping an eye on what they're saying and doing. And so she says here, poor deluded creature. I wonder, is it because of the spell that Zealot cast? Is that what gives her the ability now to tune in to what's going on there? She says, your cause is lost, your comrades there as good as dead, and your soul, Zealot, will once more be mine, only this time I shall hold it forever. has to be something to do with the spell she cast, yes? So next, Hellcats, and that will wrap up the now, first of all, initially supposed to be 3-issue reuniting of Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, but now it's turned out to be 4 issues long. So there you go. There's a couple of pages of letters, and then at the back, instead of a B story, which we've had in previous issues, there's just an advertisement, a long advertisement for the WildC.A.T.s animated series. Now, I never watched an episode of that, but what I do know is that most people regard it as absolutely terrible. So I wondered, did any of you ever watch an episode of it? And if so, what did you make of it? It's interesting here to see the designs of the characters, and Jim Lee was involved in simplifying the designs of the characters for the animated series. So you can see them kind of abstracted down to the most basic ciphers and lines conveying their costume and physical looks. And here we see some storyboards from the cartoon as well. Jim Lee, quote from him here saying, "I'm very protective of my characters, but I'm confident that Nelvana will do a terrific job bringing them to life on the small screen." As I said, most people's opinion is that that never happened. In the background here, very interesting, you can see Jim Lee's sketches for the animators of the characters, the heads at different angles. I like that one of Grifter with his mask, like looking up underneath his mask there. That's nicely done. These headshots of Zealot here at different angles, really nicely done. That's nice. I'd like to see that rather than all this blurb around it. Kind of, what have you got here? We've got designs of ships and equipment. Sort of interesting. And then the creative team for the cartoon. There you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on what is now the penultimate issue of the reuniting of Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, WildC.A.T.s number 12. If you enjoyed the video, please like it on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.